How's everybody doing out there? Matt Dinerman, track announcer here at Oaklawn. It's another edition of Out of the Starting Gate. We've got a lot of ground to cover here. We had a really good last racing week, Friday through Monday racing last week, with not only a few stakes races, but some other noteworthy performances that we're going to go over. I've also got a couple of stakes for you this week. We're going to talk about the main contenders there. Each of them, there's 2 stakes this week for Arkansas breds. So the fastest older Arkansas breds we have here at Oaklawn are going to be competing in sprint races. I've got a clocker pick for you per usual, and then at the end of the show we've got a really cool interview with trainer Dan Ward, who saddled a very nice mare. We're going to talk about Majestic Oops, who won the American Beauty Stakes this past week. A lot of good stuff here on Out of the Starting Gate this week, so without further ado, let's get to it. We go to Friday. We're going to start Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. That's how we're going to go through the races that we recapped this past week. We start with Friday's big races, and we have a first here at Oaklawn. At least on Friday we had a first, and we saw a ratings handicap race. What is that, you may ask? This race was for 6 furlong sprinters. All of these runners had earned ratings on Equibase from 70 to 80. Let's take a look at the replay here. Ninja Warrior got the job done and got an 83 buyer, defeating Henro by a narrow margin, who surged on the outside. Looking at this race here, with these ratings races, you may ask, what is it? Well, Oaklawn signed up to be one of the first tracks, along with Santa Anita, to write these ratings races. How it works, they started this a few months ago on Equibase, which is owned by the Jockey Club, and the Jockey Club has been trying to get innovative with conditions and trying to find out exactly how they can change certain conditions and make conditions to where certain horses that may have a little bit of a tougher spot with regards to their eligibility to races, finding the right spots for them. Some horses, maybe they've run through their allowance conditions and they're not necessarily a stakes horse, for example, but they're sort of in between. But their trainers don't want to put them in for a tag when they can run out of their conditions or in a condition in which they've already broken. So with that in mind, these ratings handicap races were created so that some of these horses could run without being in for a tag. They don't lose the allowance condition. For example, if they win a race like this, if you're eligible for a second level allowance maybe, and you don't want to go in that level quite yet, you can run in a ratings handicap race. You won't lose that eligibility. But Equibase has come up with ratings. Each horse, every race they run, they get a rating, and based on their ratings, you can look at their numbers of the ratings and they get a designated rating, and these ratings obviously will fluctuate, but all of these horses had a 70 to 80 rating, and Ninja Warrior, one of the classier horses in the race, got the job done. It'll be interesting to see how this goes through around the country, because one of the reasons maybe this could help racing is because hopefully it helps field size. Hopefully it helps horses based on the ratings. Maybe it's a little more competitive for horses when you look at these ratings versus seeing a horse that takes a big drop. So all things considered, I thought it was a really good race. We're actually going to see another ratings race for sprinters for fillies and mares this week, but that was the very first run at Oaklawn anyway, ratings handicap, and for each point you get a couple pounds off on the rating. So if you're an 80 horse versus a 70 horse, you're going to get less weight to carry if you're a 70 horse versus in the 80s. So that was our first ratings race on Friday afternoon. Our feature on Friday was the American Beauty Stakes. Here's the replay of Majestic Oops, who won her 6-year-old debut here. I mean, this was as easy as can be. She ran third in the Grade 1 Ballerina at 7 furlongs last summer at Saratoga. She was last seen in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Distaff, a little bit too tough for her there. But Majestic Oops, very, very impressive. She won for fun. I think she probably got a lot out of this conditioning-wise, because she only had 4 works since the Breeders' Cup in November leading up to this, but she got the right pace, ran on into it, won as easy as could be. I thought this was a really good starting point for her. We'll learn a little more about Majestic Oops and what she's going to be doing next in our end of the show interview with trainer Dan Ward. We moved to Saturday afternoon, and one race really stood out on Saturday, the Dixie Belle Stakes for 3-year-old fillies. Here's the replay. They ran this race on the wet going in the slop, and French Friction earned an 84 buyer. This was super impressive, and she looked this way when she broke her maiden on a fast track. So this was not a freak slop performance, a horse that just really liked the slop. She probably took to it, obviously, but she can obviously run well on fast tracks as well. A $250,000 purchase by City of Light, trained by Mark Casse. Christian Torres had the call there and is projected to get the mount back. I would imagine next time out they're going to stretch her out. She's run 2 sprints, run away with both races, and both times she won easily, had a ton in the tank. She really never got out of second gear. So I think this filly is serious. I will point out that Counting Stars and Search Party, 2 top 3-year-old fillies here on the grounds, also trained by Mark Casse, winning stakes races. I think French Friction is better than both of them. I think French Friction could be a grade 1 caliber runner the way she's winning these races. And she is winning like a runner that will have absolutely no problems going 2 turns. So I would imagine next time out we're going to see this gal in a Kentucky Oaks points race. First time routing it'll be for her, but she may be the real deal, French Friction. That was a super effort, and it was the way she did it, how easily she did it. She looked like she could run around there again 3 times and just kept going. Very impressive filly indeed. Sunday afternoon, we go to a couple of big performances there. We start out early in the day, race 2, and last year's grade 1 Arkansas Derby runner-up, Publisher. It took him a while to break the maiden, double-digit times in fact. Here's his replay. He got it done. Eric Asmussen, that coveted maiden diploma, now officially he's got one. This was a good effort, and last time out in a maiden race going 2 turns, he ran into a buzzsaw and Knew What's New, who got a 101 buyer for that maiden win and came right back to earn a triple-digit buyer when winning by open lengths against winners. Knew What's New is a monster, and Publisher came right back and got a 90 buyer for this maiden win in the wet going. This horse, obviously very nice. Sometimes that light bulb angle, which is an angle suggesting horses take a while to win. Once they win, the light bulb comes on and then they keep getting better. This horse is going to have to run against better company, proven winners down the road, so he's lost that maiden condition. But he's a very nice horse, and a horse that has been knocking on the door for a win for a while, a well-deserved win from Publisher. Even Eric Asmussen, right at the wire, you could see him getting really fired up after the race. So that tells me that this is a really special horse for the Asmussen barn. Also, we go on Sunday afternoon to a nice second-level allowance winner, Tough Catch, who got a 90 buyer here for this win. What I really liked about this win, it was a second-level allowance race. It was a good field. But what I liked about this race was that he went really fast. The track tightened up a little bit because it was wet. Sometimes we see that faster times. Speed horses tend to carry it a little better when the track gets wet and it gets a little bit tighter. But nonetheless, he had hard pressure the whole way around from a horse named Go Captain. And this horse just kept on rolling. He could have basically spit the bit and said, I've had enough, or got tired, but he didn't. And Luis Saez had the call here for trainer Dallas Stewart. Tough Catch with this 90 buyer, getting a nice win here. I thought it was a very good effort. Wouldn't be surprised to see him in an overnight stake of some sort down the road here in the next month or so, whether it be here at Oaklawn or maybe even if they freshen him up and run him back in Kentucky where Dallas is stabled in the spring, summer, and fall. On Monday afternoon, our special President's Day card, we saw a very nice first-time starter kick off the day. River Wind for trainer Norm Casse. He was working well in the mornings. I'd watched her work out. Here's the replay. For her dominant maiden win. She won by 8 here. A daughter of Lexington. She's out of a half-sibling to Grade 3 Longacres Mile winner Striker PhD, a Washington State racing legend. So Nancy and I on the pre-race show last week talked about in racing things coming full circle, and that was very much the case in this connection with me and Riverwind, seeing Striker PhD's little sister producing a very nice maiden winner in Riverwind here in Hot Springs, Arkansas. She's got sprint on both sides of the pedigree. Her sire, Lexingtonian, her dam, they were sprinters. Riche Lay is the dam's name. So whether she wants to stretch out, that's a big question mark. But there's nothing wrong with having a good sprinter, and clearly she's got ability, this 3-year-old filly. This was also the start of a big, big day for Ramon Vasquez, who obviously has won thousands of races at many different tracks, has been very successful pretty much wherever he goes. He won 5 races on the program, so well done to Ramon and his jockey agent, Cody Autry, for doing a good job getting Ramon on live horses as well. The feature race on Monday was the Ozark Stakes for 3-year-old sprinters at 6 furlongs. Let's take a look at the replay here. Oscar's Hope, the second choice in the wagering for trainer Tom Amos, Luis Saez aboard, getting the job done here. This horse was basically eased in the Smarty Jones Stakes going a route. Clearly he's not a router, but this horse had never routed before. So they'll keep him sprinting after this race for sure. However, even though he won this race, the main storyline was not Oscar's Hope winning this race, unfortunately. We want to shine light on him. He ran a good race, very workmanlike effort. Not a grade 1 type of horse. It doesn't appear by any means. I don't think he's anywhere close to a grade 1 type of horse or a top sprinter, but at the same time, he did run well. He's a nice horse. They bought him, I think, for $150,000, and he's made over $300,000. So he's done well for his connections, and he's obviously a pretty darn nice son of twirling candy as a sprinter. But the main storyline here was Ewing, a horse who, into the race, there was a lot of hype surrounding him. He was purchased for a lot of money as a 2-year-old, $585,000. He must have worked really well at the 2-year-old in training sale in Florida where he was purchased. Went off at, I think, 2-5 when he broke his maiden at Saratoga, and he won by 12 that day. And then he came back in the Saratoga Special to defeat Obliteration, who was a monster winner of a stake here at Oaklawn earlier in the meet. And then, of course, Obliteration just ran second last week in the Saudi Derby overseas for multiple $million purses. Ewing, though, he came back off a layoff since the Saratoga Special. He broke a half step slow, didn't run a step. I mean, this horse just never got into the bit. It was very clear from the onset that he wasn't showing the speed that we saw when he was a 2-year-old at Saratoga. And it was interesting because Mark Cassie, who trains this horse, he noted to DRF's Mary Rampolini that he was hoping that Christian Torres, who was aboard today or this past week, to get this horse to relax, because he's very much a go, go, go type of horse. He's always had running on his mind. He's always very, very fast, and they were trying to get this horse to relax. Well, that wasn't a problem, but it wasn't necessarily Christian's doing the fact that that horse relaxed as much as he did. It was the horse just not really wanting to run. He didn't want to exert his best. And after the race, Christian Torres told Oaklawn Publicity, this horse was just flat. He just didn't break super sharp out of the gate. Was pushing him a little along into the far turn to try to get this horse going, and he just did no running. So back to the drawing board for Ewing. This horse, a very fast horse. There have always been question marks as to how far this horse wants to go, and if he does want to go farther, he's going to need to learn to relax. But it was a surprising effort. It was a surprisingly dull effort. He'd been training very well, reportedly, heading into this race. So again, they will have to go back to the drawing board with Ewing, but that was a peculiar effort, because he's certainly better than what he showed here at Oaklawn a few days back. Those were all our good races. We had plenty of good performances to talk about, as we noted throughout last week. Now we get to this week, Thursday through Sunday racing. First post each day is 12:30. In our feature race on Friday, we have no feature race of stakes on Thursday. We go to Friday, and the feature race is the $150,000 Down the Dusty Road Stakes for Arkansas bred fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And the headliner, no doubt about it, is the 1-2 morning line odds favorite. Her name is Holland Ice. She won last year's Down the Dusty Road and looks to not only defend her title, but become the first Arkansas bred ever to earn 7 figures. She's just a few $1,000s short of $1 million as an earner. Holland Ice, a gray filly that was originally trained by Lindsay Schultz, and shortly after a couple of big races for Lindsay, was privately purchased by owners who moved the horse to Saffie Joseph Jr. Let's take a look at a nice win from Holland Ice last year in our big filly and mare sprint each and every year here at Oaklawn against Open Company, the Matron Stakes. 10 wins, 5 seconds from 19 starts. She's never finished worse than second in 9 starts at 6 furlongs. This filly is fast. This filly is a gamer. This filly is super, super special. And no, she did not run well in the Breeders' Cup when she faced the best of her class. She was also going 7 furlongs that day. She's one that probably wants to go about as far as 6.5, and that's about as far as she wants to go. But nonetheless, she's a very, very nice sprinter, and she will be very, very tough to beat for Saffie this weekend on Friday here at Oaklawn. Her main competitor may be Hush It Honey from the Randy Morris barn. Randy's done a really good job, I think, with this mare. She's only run once in about a year, but it actually came at Churchill Downs in November when she beat a second-level allowance field, and a tough field at that, of Open Company runners. And Hush It Honey, freshening up 3 months for this race, We know that she can run well fresh as she was coming off a 10-month break in Kentucky, but she very much is much better than everybody else in this race in terms of speed figures other than Hall and Ice. Hall and Ice is up here, Hush and Honey's about right here, and then everybody else is around here. It looks like it'll be a pretty formful race. There are a couple other runners to note in here. Caliente Star, she won the Rainbow Mist Stakes last year here, went in the barn of Tammy Hornsby, making her first start for trainer Ron Moquette, who's done a lot of good work here at Oaklawn, obviously, over the years. And I think that this is going to be a fun race to watch. It may be formful, but you've got some real nice star-studded filly and mare Archie-breds, the top contenders here, very nice race horses, stakes caliber runners themselves if they were running against Open Company, and that is the field for the Down the Dusty Road. That'll be on Friday's feature event. Saturday afternoon, we get to the boys. They get their turn, the $150,000 no double Breeders' Stakes. Here's the field. They're going 6 furlongs here, and you've got 3 runners similar to the Down the Dusty Road, 3 runners that really make a lot of sense in this race. And we'll start talking about runners that ran first and second, Bohemian Bow and Navy Seal, in a state bred allowance on December 20th. It's a rematch for them. Here's the replay. Bohemian Bow, he got a narrow win here over Navy Seal. And Bohemian Bow, he got the right trip. He was close to the pace. He got things his own way. Navy Seal was coming off a layoff. Bohemian Bow had a little more tightness into him, so to speak, and Bohemian Bow edged out Navy Seal. In my opinion, this time around, very much likely that Navy Seal could have an edge here over Bohemian Bow, although Bohemian Bow is the quickest of the speed. Like usual, he's very one-dimensional. He's going to say, come and catch me if you can. While BB, Bohemian Bow, hasn't run since then, Navy Seal has run since that last affair in which they hooked up. And Navy Seal ran against Open Company in the Commodore Overnight Stakes and ran a respectable 4th, I thought, that day behind Bourbon Bash, who ran a hole in the wind. And Navy Seal was only about a length or a length and a half behind the runner-up finisher. So you take out Bourbon Bash, and you're left with, I thought, a really respectable run against Open Company for Navy Seal. Touchdown Arkansas is another one that figures to get bet. He's 3-1 on the morning line. Here's the replay from his last race. He made up good ground, but came up just a neck short on February 6th. This was a second-level allowance Arkansas bred race, not something you see often. And he finished behind Nikolai. It was a pretty decent individual, a pretty hard-knocking Archie-bred that would very much fit in this race, but he would be willing back quick. That's probably my guess why he's not entered. Nikolai'd be willing back, I think, 2 weeks since that hard-fought win over Touchdown Arkansas. But Touchdown Arkansas is coming to play ball on short rest. He will get play, and he draws a good outside post for this race here, so should get a good trip off the speedy Bohemian Bow. That's the field for the no double Breeders' Stakes. That'll be for Arkansas breds on Saturday as our feature. So we had 2 feature races this week. We're going to run one on Friday, one on Saturday, and we've gone through all our recaps. We've gone through all the stakes. Now it's time for the patented Denny's Clocker pick of the week. I'm going to give you a 10-1 shot on the morning line. First-time starter. His name is Hovland. And Hovland, maiden special weight for 3-year-olds. That's race 3 on Thursday, going 6 furlongs. Trained by Chris Davis. You can see here, I really like the end of this horse's work as opposed to earlier in the work. He looked fine early in the work, but the end was really what caught my eye. Coming to the wire, you're going to see Jaime Torres, who's aboard on Thursday. He's working this runner, and he's not really asking him for much, and this horse is doing it nice and easy. Outworks another maiden in the Chris Davis barn named Armies Marauder, who coincidentally is a major player in race 6 for maiden optional $75,000 claimers later in the program on Thursday. The dam of Hovland was a stakes-placed sprinter, while one sibling won sprinting, and another was stakes-placed sprinting on the dirt. So that tells you Hovland's got sprint pedigree. Chris Davis, 15% with firsters. I like that this horse on the gallop out opened up on the workmate a little bit. And I think Hovland has some ability, and at a square price 10-1 on the morning line, I think he's one. If you don't like him to win, at least think about using him underneath in exotics. I also think there's a Lonnie Briley trainee named Super Happy. I think that he's a horse that can run too, but I feel like Hovland, if him or Super Happy run well, might be Hovland's day, just because I think Hovland might have a little more conditioning just watching them work. Super Happy's been a horse by Run Happy that I think can improve with a race under his belt. He looks like a horse to me training that might want to get a run in, not necessarily physically. They've been working him for a while, but maybe mentally he's still figuring things out. I think Hovland's been just a little bit more professional in the mornings, but both runners can run. My Denny's Clocker pick of the week is Hovland. Let's talk about about before we sign off here. A couple of things of note, and then of course we'll show you that interview. There is a giveaway this Saturday here at Oaklawn. For fans 12 and under, we've got a plushie giveaway. Here's a look at him. Look at that little guy here. I mean, if you're a youngster coming to the races, parents, make sure you get your kid this plushie. Just a really cool giveaway, and we're celebrating the year of the horse here in 2026. That's on Saturday, February 21st. This Saturday, that plushie giveaway for fans 12 and under. There's limited supply, so get out here early so you can get your son or daughter that plushie. And remember, next week, after this week, it's a big week. We're going to have no shortage of content to talk about on next week's Out of the Starting Gate. It's Rebel Week, going to be a huge week for us. And remember, this year the Rebel's on Sunday, and that'll do it for our Out of the Starting Gate. I'm Matt Dinerman. By the way, if you like what you're seeing here, if you like this content, make sure to comment on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to our Oaklawn YouTube page. We've got all sorts of good coverage of not just Out of the Starting Gate, but of behind-the-scenes action, race replays, things that Oaklawn is promoting, giveaways, the casino. Make sure to subscribe to Oaklawn's YouTube page, and thank you very much for tuning in to Out of the Starting Gate. Before we say goodbye, coming up now, my interview this morning with trainer Dan Ward. Here with trainer Dan Ward. Dan, thanks for taking the time to chat with us. I know you're a busy man, and we'll start right away with Majestic Oops, your big mare who won this weekend. You led her over there. She looked great in the paddock, Dan. On the track, she looked like she was ready to roll, and she sure produced. But my question to you is, were you expecting her to run that kind of race sprinting?
Going off the 2 times that we ran her sprinting, she was second the first time we ran her, and then she was third in the grade 1, ballerina. So I didn't think we'd have any trouble running 6 furlongs.
Watching the race, obviously she won easily going 6 furlongs, and she looked physically just finishing up as good as she had in any of her races, really. And as you know, Dan, as a handicapper, I looked at the race initially and was totally wrong about everything and thought, well, maybe this is a good setup race. Maybe they want to go farther down the road. But the way she won, and taking that into consideration, is there a good chance that we may see her continue to sprint versus try routing her like you did for much of last year?
You know the difference when you route, and sometimes last year she got a little bit too strong the first part of the race and didn't settle and didn't finish. When you sprint, you don't have to worry about that. You know, she just has her kick. The owners like the matron coming up, but we'll nominate to some other races. Maybe the Azari might nominate, but I think they're looking at the matron and then maybe stay sprinting.
Yeah, and the matron, of course, our big sprint stake here at Oaklawn. Dan, I've known you for a long time. When I was a hot walker as a high schooler, you were working right next door in Jerry Hollendorfer's barn. You've also worked under Bobby Frankel, so just working under those 2 guys alone, 2 Hall of Famers, meaning you've worked with a lot of good horses. You have Majestic Oops. She's your stake star. She was your first Breeders' Cup starter, and you've also worked with a number of graded, not just graded, but grade 1 types of horses. What were some of your favorites over the years that you've worked with? I know there are a lot of them, but try to hone in on a couple.
I would say with Bobby, we were a claiming barn, you know, and trying to get better horses. And then when we got a break from Juddmonte, we got 3 horses. And then we had we did a good job with Marquetry and X-Born. And then we started to get more and more horses. That was the big start for him. So Marquetry and X-Born and Tusaud and Jolifa, good horses like that. And then it just goes from there. You know, get better and better horses. We got Bertrando, and with Jerry, you know, we had Songbird, Unique Bella, Share Belief. You know, nice horses. So
working with those types of horses and with Majestic Oops, I'm sure you see a difference. Just the way they carry themselves, the way they move. It seems like there's a big difference there. They just sort of separate themselves from the rest.
A lot of it is mental. You know, they don't lose their race before the race. You know, Songbird, the first time she ran, she was in the paddock and the horses on each side of her were acting up and jumping up and just stood there. And we needed a bigger girth, so I said, you got to go get a bigger. They just stood there, you know, didn't even move. So when the horses are like that, and there was a time that she was going to work, she came out and jogged all the way back around to the 8th pole, and stood there was a loose horse, and they had to get the loose horse and all kinds of confusion and everything. She just stood there, you know, like it was an outrider. Yeah, Mike had his feet out of the irons, and they thought, okay, come on, let's go. When they're like that, it makes it easier for you.
Obviously working not only in bigger operations, because Bobby had a good chunk of horses, but he didn't have the size that Jerry did, so you worked in two solid barns with two different operations, and you probably learned a lot about training and other things. And the way they train, Jerry and Bobby, very different as well.
Very different.
When you think of looking back at working for these gentlemen, and you can even talk and attest to this for folks who maybe want to go out on their own and be trainers and their assistants right now, or want to be an assistant and go on to being a trainer, what are some of the more important things you think you learn from Jerry and Bobby?
You know what you can do? You can go to work in a lot of different barns and then try to pick something out that you like. You know, like I like things that Jerry does and things that Bobby does, and try to get as much information as you can and do it your own way, but take the best of you know, each barn that you work for, because they're all different, you know, and horses are different too. You can't train Majestic Oops like a 17-hand stallion, because she's small. She's
Sure.
15 hands. They're all different. Try to come up with a program for each one of them and keep them happy, and they'll run good.
And finally, you talk about keeping horses happy, not only at the racetrack, but after the racetrack, because I know you're a big proponent of thoroughbred aftercare, as we are here at Oaklawn with the Ring the Bell program.
Mm-hmm.
Just tell us a little bit about how important thoroughbred aftercare is.
Well, I just don't want to see a horse that I had for a long time, or any horse, running in cheap races, you know, on down the road. For example, Anti-Gravity, we had bought him for $4,000. He made $500,000, and we found him a good home. Coach Adams, we found him a good home after his best race, a lounge race. He finally got the condition. He won 10 races for us. Now we can go see him in New Jersey, see him in horse shows and everything. It's a lot better. You know.
Nepal Up, he's another one who won the Trails End last year. Are there any specific barns or people you've worked with that you want to give a shout out to?
Well, there's Connie DeMaio in New Jersey. She places the horses for us. Kelly Ferret does that here, and they come and they pick up the horses and they find homes for them and everything, and we can keep track of them. And the list is very long, you know, retired horses. So it's important. It's also important to have owners that agree. You know, okay, he's done. You know, like we had, like what I see last year, and he was 10 and he was running good in New Jersey, and I told the vets, I said, he's 10 and he's just going to run a couple times. We've already got a home for him. You know, it's very important.
Dan, thanks for taking the time. We're looking forward to seeing Majestic Oops and all your horses on the track soon.
Thank you.